Meta, YouTube, even Alphabet are facing courtroom scrutiny in California this week as jury selection begins in a trial accusing the companies of fueling a youth mental health crisis. The case is being watched closely as a test for thousands of similar lawsuits nationwide. The plaintiff, a 19-year-old California woman, claiming she became addicted to the platforms at a young age and that their design contributed to depression and suicidal thoughts. The companies deny those claims, with YouTube arguing its platform is fundamentally different from TikTok and Instagram. And just this week, TikTok agreed to settle with the plaintiff. So let's take a legal deep dive into this case. Attorney Josh Kolsrud is back with us again. You know, this seems very similar to back in the day, back in the 90s, when it was big tobacco that people were fighting.
It's very similar because in those cases, the plaintiffs were able to show that the big tobacco companies studied behavior and they knew that the risks were there, and they still were able to market to those people knowing about the risk and not telling the public about those risks, which is very similar to the lawsuits against these companies right now.
Right. And of course, it's no surprise that social media contributes to mental health issues, right? In the news, even, there's study after study. We talk about how this leads to this. There's depression. There's all kinds of issues. But what is it that these giant platforms, what are they going to argue? I mean, couldn't they say, well, you're the one making the decision to go down this rabbit hole?
Well, they can't say that this young lady didn't suffer some type of mental malady, right? Because she clearly did. But what they're going to say is that there isn't any causation that they can prove, that the mental illness, happened cumulatively over a long period of time, and that the plaintiff can't prove that they were what they call a contributing factor to that mental illness. So it's an uphill battle. And so the plaintiff in this case is going to have to show that really, but for these platforms, the mental illness would not exist. And when you're talking about something, again, a mental illness that develops over a prolonged period of time, it's a tough road to follow.
Okay, but the fact that TikTok settled
just
a couple of days ago, what does that say?
Well, it gives the big platforms less excuses, because one of the, and it shows that they don't have a united front anymore.
Right.
Now, the law says that it's irrelevant, but any person who sees that is going to say to themselves, well, maybe they have a point. And we all know that these big companies don't settle unless the allegations are very dangerous against the company.
And doesn't this open the floodgates?
It very well could.
More lawsuits?
It does create a precedent that these companies will settle against these types of claims.
Yeah. All right. Josh, thank you so much for your insight
on
both the cases. We appreciate it.